Hello there. Welcome in. Glad to have you, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR, Extra Sports 1300, or you're listening on the streaming apps of those two fine radio stations, which can both be found pretty much everywhere where digital streaming apps are given away because they are free to use. They are free to download in the first place. And they're both sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and well-being for all. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics across the next 3 hours. And I do mean that even more so today. Man, we hit hockey, football, basketball, soccer, baseball. We run the gamut today. And I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. You could call or text into the show. That way, producer Ray Dominguez is standing by, eagerly awaiting your correspondence. Let's start with hoops first here. Now, you may think that the NBA season is too long at 82 games, but we may look back once this Nuggets season is over, and I mean the entire season, not just 82, but however many more games are after that in the postseason, and say that the Nuggets needed every single one of the 82. Last night, last night for the sixth time this season, the Denver Nuggets held an opponent to under 100 points. They beat Golden State 116-93. Last year, they kept 5 teams they played from getting over 100 points. But the thing is, not last year to this year, it's that 4 of these occasions, like last night, have occurred in just the last 18 games. When you look at where this team was defensively before the All-Star break and after, one metric to measure it is defensive efficiency. The Nuggets before the All-Star break were 24th in a league of 30 in defensive efficiency. They're 15th post-All-Star break. It clearly has taken David Adelman, who is an offensive coach by trade, the entire season to figure out the other end of the floor here at the end of his first full season as head coach. And the significance of this goes a little bit further beyond the aphorism defense wins championships. The worst defensive team by this metric in the last 10 years is the 2023 Denver Nuggets. By defensive efficiency, that Nuggets team was the worst team to have won a title in the last decade. They ranked 15th in defensive efficiency. This team, as you take both halves of the season and combine them, they're 21st. So this is not a segment me saying, go ahead and plan the parade. I'm just saying there is significant growth that we are seeing with this team on the defensive end of the floor. But what you have to ask yourself is, because of all the injuries, especially to Aaron Gordon, was this team unable to play defense the way they could in these and now that they are healthier, the last 15 games specifically, they rank 17th in the league in defensive efficiency. Is that more of an indication of who they are? Now, all those numbers I threw out, the Denver Nuggets, it would behoove them to be better, right? To improve a little bit more in these last 6 games. But the difference between the beginning of the season till now, it's noticeable. And how much is that a byproduct of the relative health of this Nuggets team? even if they were 17th all season, about in that range, you could almost balance it out because this team is better offensively than the one that we saw in 2023. So does a number one offense have the ability to pull up the 17th best defense? The way the third best offense pulled up the 15th rank? We'll all find out together, won't we? But the bottom line is there was no way that the Denver Nuggets were going to win a title, probably having to go through OKC to do it, playing the level of defense they played for much of this season. Just, they weren't going to. Now, the last month, you've seen them play at a respectable yet kind of middle of the road level defensively. Now, granted, this form of the Nuggets holds up over the final 6 games in this season. I think you will at least have the ability going into the postseason to say the team we're seeing right now is the best version of the Denver Nuggets that we have seen all season. And really, that's all you can ask for, right? Going into the playoffs, are you peaking? Are you playing your best basketball? And there are a lot of things right now saying that the Denver Nuggets are. I mean, look at Murray and Jokic are having statistically their best seasons ever. Their depth is at least on par with the team that won a title. And now the defense is playing at this acceptable, albeit middle of the pack level. Is that good enough? Now, that is all to say if they are healthy when the playoffs begin. And that continues to be an open question. The defense, we might be needing to change our tune slightly when it comes to the level of defense this team is capable of playing. Their relative health, that has remained the same. Last night was supposed to be just the second time since November that the Denver Nuggets were full strength. And then the morning of, Aaron Gordon calls out because of hamstring tightness. They then lose both Cam Johnson and Spencer Jones during the game. So it keeps happening. Here's David Adelman lamenting that it keeps happening, but trying to put on a brave face.
Yeah, there was a timeout where I just looked back at my day, and I woke up this morning thinking Aaron Gordon was going to start. He didn't. And then Spence goes out, and then Cam goes out, and I thought Zeke was really impactful. Then he went out. And I'm hoping for good news, tomorrow. Obviously, it's nice to have these 2 days in between the next one. It's just been it's so funny this year has been like that. It's never a guard and a forward or a guard and a center. It's like it's just the whole group goes out. So we'll adjust as we need to try to win the next game.
And my omission of Zeke Naji was intentional because he is not going to be part of the playoff rotation as Gordon, Johnson, and Jones figure to be. But yes, it just further underscores how bad the Nuggets have been bit by the injury bug this season. And now is it good that they have 82 because then they can get these guys back before the postseason, or is it bad that it's 82 and if they would have just called off the season about a week ago, things would be a little bit better for the Denver Nuggets? And I'll let you discuss amongst yourselves. That is the stuff, setting aside the defense, how they're playing. The injury stuff, I've been talking about this for weeks now. This is the stuff that you can't just say, broad strokes that they can't win. Right? Like, you can't say that, but this being a sports fan, that you just get these feelings where you're just like, I don't think it's our year. The injury stuff plays into that. That's where you feel like, oh, it might not be the Nuggets' year, because every time you think that we're getting a full strength Nugget squad, we're not, and more guys get hurt. Not just a late scratch with Aaron Gordon. Somebody else picks up a knock along the way. It just feels like that full strength Nuggets team is a one-off, or is a once in a great while. But the problem is the Nuggets, don't have a great while left. He got 6 games, and then it's go time. And their path right now is Minnesota, OKC, the first 2 rounds. They got to be ready round 1. I think they can beat Minnesota even without a couple of players. Aaron Gordon, not one of them. They have to have Aaron Gordon. But Spencer Jones, Cam Johnson, whether it's Peyton Watson, I still think that the Nuggets can get by Minnesota. They're not getting by Oklahoma City with multiple players out. Just not. This entire offseason was about building depth, that you need depth to win. So when you're missing 2-3 guys, 2 from the starting lineup, a couple more from your bench, you're not deep. You don't have depth. So let's not lose the plot here. This is what this offseason was about. That's what this season was about, that this Nuggets team getting ready to play OKC was deeper. They had more of what OKC had last year. But now they got some more guys banged up. So it just feels like maybe it's not in the cards. You'll keep raging against it. You'll keep fighting against it. I'm doing the same thing because the injury stuff, I can't. Like, that's a gut feeling that I have, but I'm not going to just sit here when the Nuggets are playing better defense, or after Jamal Murray has a great game, or Nikola Jokic, and just dwell on the fact that they weren't at full strength. So I try to put that to the side. That we all understand health is a huge caveat. I'm just trying to tell you what I am seeing right now from this Denver Nuggets team. But I'll tell you the moment coming up in these playoffs that you'll know the Nuggets are done. If the injury situation, whatever it might be, however many players it is, the minute Jonas Valanciunas steps on the court in a playoff game, pronounce the Denver Nuggets season dead. Right then. Because David Adelman will do everything in his power. He will exhaust every option to make sure that Jonas Valanciunas does not step out on the floor in a playoff game. If too many guys are hurt, that's his only option, the Nuggets are done. Because last night, David Adelman tried. He tried. All these guys got hurt. He went to Zeke Naji first. Ray texted me chuckling about Zeke Naji getting in before Jonas Valanciunas. Then Zeke Naji gets hurt. David Adelman has no choice, seemingly, but to bring Jonas Valanciunas in. He was able to tolerate him for 5 minutes before Deron Holmes checked in. You know Deron Holmes. They drafted him a couple years ago, missed all of last season because of an injury. He's played in the G League. You've hardly seen him. David Adelman could not wait to put Deron Holmes onto the floor and get Jonas Valanciunas out there. So let me just say that as we go into the postseason, the minute Valanciunas steps onto the floor, that's when you know David Adelman is fresh out of ideas and the Nuggets are in a lot of trouble. In the interim, seconding David Adelman's hope there, that all of this is mostly, even Cam Johnson said it was very precautionary. He was ready to come back in the game. So that's good news for the Nuggets. Aaron Gordon being proactive, given how his season has gone, is probably a good thing. Spencer Jones is kind of the one that will wait and see the severity of that. But the bigger story last night, I think, is still the turn this team has made on the defensive end. And it is, I saw a quote from Tim Hardaway. It's so simplistic, yet so difficult for many teams to pull off. Basically, Tim Hardaway just said they're committing. That's it. It's want to. That's it. And it's maybe frustrating to hear that if you're a Nuggets fan and you're seeing them lose these big leads and losing in crunch time. And I'm right there with you. I get it. It is so simplistic, but also so difficult for so many teams. And the Denver Nuggets, for the vast majority of the season, have been one of them. But they've gotten better. They've gotten much better in the past month or so. So we'll see if that holds out for the last 6 games and how much we can believe in it when the playoffs begin shortly thereafter. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the Denver Nuggets coming up. The other big, probably for most people, the basketball game of the weekend. Let's talk a little UConn Duke next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Tax day is almost here, but don't stress. Enter the Uncle Sam's giveaway for a chance to win $5,000 to bail you out. Head to extrasports1300.com or kvor.com to enter this national contest for your chance to win, again, $5,000 with the Uncle Sam's giveaway, sponsored locally by Kruger Brothers Construction. Plan now, build stress-free. The distance between UConn and Duke yesterday during that basketball game was directly proportional to the distance between me and my television on Sunday. Halftime, I have it on, but I'm way in the kitchen. I'm planning out dinner, cleaning some things up. Just I'm hearing what's going on, but not really. And then UConn gets to within 10, and I kind of make my way into the dining room and have a seat, and I'm on my laptop doing some things. And then by the end of that game, I'm on my couch glued to the television to witness Braylon Mullins hit that shot. And when he did, I let out an audible O followed by, I'm not going to tell you which four-letter word, just know it was a four-letter word. And it had both of my sons, because, they're teenagers. They're not sitting with me. Come on. One of them's upstairs, one of them's downstairs. They both come running down or up their respective set of stairs to see what had happened. And when they find out that I have not had anything harm me, they're like, okay, whatever, Dad, and then went back downstairs. The closest thing that I think I can remember to what I witnessed yesterday, and this is like a generational thing. This depends on your age, right? Like, I understand what Christian Laettner did. I've seen highlights of it. I didn't live through it. I wasn't watching that game. The closest thing to what that was in terms of stakes and just sheer insanity was Chris Jenkins for Villanova in 2016, right? Carolina hits the game-tying three. Jenkins comes back, hits the game winner. But UConn was down 19 points. Like, I always try to run this through the filter of, am I being too much of a prisoner of the moment? Am I just going to the last thing that happened and say it's the greatest? So I thought, well, let me think of that North Carolina-Villanova game. Yeah, UConn was down 19. It is. It might be the best. Can we at least say it's the best Elite Eight game we've ever seen? Most remarkable finish, maybe. Maybe the whole game wasn't great. The first half was lame. But, like, sometimes you are seeing the best thing ever. It's possible. I worry that we get too in that mode, but I think yesterday you're not if you're saying that. And just the series of events. UConn misses the first free throw. I'm like, well, that's it, right? Make the second one. Duke gets fouled. They make both free throws. It's a 4-point game, and it's basically a wrap. So for them to miss the free throw and to still find a way to win that game, pretty crazy. I'm sure you've heard this and you probably watched it or saw the highlight, but it's worth playing again. Here's the call of that final sequence from Westwood One.
From Sarr gets it into Cam Boozer. Boozer back to Sarr. Now ahead to Boozer, and UConn got a steal. Caravan for Mullins. Long three. He got it. Oh, he got it. He hit it. He hit the long three-pointer from the logo with 0.3 of a second left to go. I don't believe it. UConn has taken the lead. with 0.3 of a second left to go.
Again, Westwood won on the call there. You heard it if you were listening on Extra Sports 1300 live as it was happening. And one thing I will say here, I don't believe a single word that anybody on UConn says past that game. I don't believe a single word that any of them say about, Mullins believing he could hit the shot, Caravan doing. I don't think Alex Caravan did anything other than just throw it to the guy who was closest to him. But look, the victors write the history books. So there's a lot of UConn saying they believed and they were consciously making these decisions in order for this to happen. And I'm not going to rake them over the coals for it. They can do that. That's fine. But I'm just saying I don't believe it. I just think it was a mad scramble, and Caravan just hot potatoed it because there was guys in front of him, hot potatoed it to this kid from Indianapolis who buries a logo 3 to coincidentally send his team to Indianapolis. I don't know if you've heard 1,000 times that Braylon Mullins is from Indianapolis, but he's from Indianapolis where the Final Four is. And now the inevitable question. Yes, Duke choked. Yes, they did. The credit that you give UConn is that I did not notice a difference between the way they played in the second half and the way they played in the first half. Despite what the scoreboard said, UConn stuck with the game plan. And Dan Hurley almost cried in the post-game press conference when they brought up his team was 1 for their first 18 from three-point range. But they kept doing it. They kept on, said, this is the plan that we had to beat Duke. We're going to stay with it. Shots are going to start falling. That part of it, I can believe that UConn was saying to themselves. I'm just saying on that last sequence, it was a mad panic, fight or flight, knee-jerk reactions to things. That's what was happening at the end. But it was a very conscious decision from UConn to just stick with the same game plan, believing that it would work. And it did, and you give them credit for that. But I thought Duke committed the number one cardinal sin when you're up big. They took their foot off the gas. I can't tell you how many times it seemed like Duke just came down the floor when they were trying to protect that lead and just handed the ball to Cam Boozer and say, go to work. Just go. And look, Cam Boozer is their best player. You go to your best player in the biggest moments. I get that. Duke didn't get a 19-point lead by just simply feeding Cam Boozer and leaving him to his own devices. I thought it was very conservative, very vanilla from Duke in the way in facing what was going on. But it's a classic mistake made by so many teams in a variety of different sports in that situation. You turtle up, you just try to watch the seconds tick down, and it's prevent defense prevents you from winning, right? That kind of a idea. And that's choking. That's not sticking with what got you there. That's in the face of pressure, altering things, but not for the better, altering things just to try and bleed the clock. And I give Caden Boozer a ton of credit. I just have to say it. That dude took more accountability than like 80% of athletes do these days. He sat there at his locker in the worst moment of his life and answered every question. So credit to him. And also, in fairness, John Shire was pointing to the front court. John Shire wanted Caden Boozer to throw it into the front court. He just didn't execute. It was the right idea. Maybe you got to step through or you got to wait till the guy comes down and throw it over him. It was just poor execution. It wasn't necessarily a terrible idea, or at least an idea that wasn't shared by his coach. But UConn, steady as she goes, even when they were facing a mountain that nobody thought they would be able to summit by the end of that game. And it was an all-time March Madness classic. That one's going to go down in the history books. And then we're going to remember the name Braylon Mullins. And he's going to highlight one shining moment when this tournament is over. And here's the other thing I was thinking with UConn getting to another Final Four. Remember the one year where UConn wasn't the champions and Dan Hurley was like searching for meaning in his life? You know how down Dan Hurley was last year because they couldn't three-peat? And now they're right back in the Final Four. You know, Rick Pitino said something, I think it was after St. John's lost to Duke, talking about, you know, we've been talking about how Cinderella in her traditional form, she's dead, right? These mid-majors are not, they're going to do less and less and less as the NCAA tournament expands and changes and all this kind of stuff. He also said blue bloods won't exist anymore. And I get what he's getting at because the playing field has been evened out a little bit more with NIL, with the portal. I get that. But in my lifetime, there isn't a bluer blue blood than UConn. I mean, the first NCAA championship game I remember watching was the Duke team led by Cherokee Parks going up against Nolan Richardson's 40 Minutes of Hell Arkansas team. That's the first title game I can remember. Since that time, since 1994, UConn has doubled up every other team in the country in national titles. I grew up with Khalid El-Amin and Rip Hamilton, Jake Voskuhl. That's a fun game. Let's name older UConn Huskies. Those Calhoun teams. They're one of the best teams in the country. They've been one of the best teams, save for a couple of down years, for most of the time I've been cognizant of what's going on in college basketball. For me, in my lifetime, the most significant programs, Duke, UConn, Kentucky, and Gonzaga. And Kentucky and Gonzaga aren't because of national titles, although Kentucky has won some. It's Gonzaga because of the Cinderella turned quasi blue blood that they have become. And kind of the, you know, were you in at the ground floor or did you come in more around Adam Morrison time when they were really competing for national titles? And then Kentucky is because of the constant stream of NBA players that Calipari was turning out. But in terms of winning, in terms of national titles, I think of UConn and Duke. And there are others. Kansas has won a couple, North Carolina. But to me, it's UConn and Duke in terms of the success they have had. So I don't know if blue bloods are done, because in my teenage to adult life, UConn is as blue a blue blood as there is. But they do deserve a ton of credit for being able to adapt, because there are other big NIL spenders that were one and done, that were done before the Sweet 16, and UConn's in the Final Four. Not everybody is spending their money wisely. Not everybody has the infrastructure, ideally the coach, Dan Hurley, to be able to put it all together. They deserve a ton of credit for getting back to the Final Four. What a wild game yesterday. Take your thoughts on it. 719-247-1313. A team that has had a similar arc of success as UConn lately calls this state home. Talk about next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. What UConn has been to men's basketball, Denver is to men's hockey. And it's funny, I was looking at the years that both the UConn's men's basketball team won national titles in DU hockey. They actually have 2 years exactly the same where they won. And this year could be another one. And then you look, so UConn won in 99, but they also won in 04. DU won in 04. DU won again in 05. UConn won in 2011, 2014. DU wins in 2017. DU wins in 2022. UConn wins 2023, and they both win in 2024. And John Buchagras, who's on the call for ESPN, I think put it perfectly. They are, like it or not, what was the text we got in, Ray? You can't spell dumb without DU?
Yeah.
Okay. As much as you may hate it, they are the standard. And I talked about this last year. They're as successful as any one team is at any institution in America. Penn State wrestling, UConn basketball, Alabama football, Denver hockey. The run of success are very, very similar. But what continues, if you could, keep from vomiting in your mouth long enough to really go through this, it's remarkable that DU is on that list. I just mentioned Penn State, UConn, Alabama, Denver. Different sports, different circumstances, I understand, but in what world are Penn State, UConn, Alabama, and DU ever in the same conversation? Those other ones are huge institutions that don't surprise you that they've had an unbelievable run of success in a sport because they're some of the biggest brands in college athletics. DU is not. DU, in fact, is not one of the certainly 2, maybe 3 most notable institutions in this state. Obviously, CU, CSU, I think more people will name Air Force before they name Denver in terms of brand recognition. So Denver's not even, in some ways, the biggest institution in our state. And yet they have by far the most successful team that any institution in this state currently have. That school just off University I-25, drove by it the other day. It's remarkable that they keep doing this. And we know locally a little bit better, right? Frank Serratori calls them the evil empire. Like, we understand what DU, the importance they put on that program, the resources they put into that program. It's remarkable, but maybe not as remarkable to those on the outside that are going, DU, Denver, I didn't even know Denver had a college. Isn't CU their college? We get it a little bit more, but it still is remarkable. And the fact that, David Carl and who he is, it's not revelation anymore. I mean, the guy has been mentioned with NHL jobs, but think about the circumstances in which he took over the program for Jim Montgomery. George Gwozdecky, never far from the minds of hockey fans in this state. And this young guy takes over this team. And here's the kicker. He might end up being more successful than Gwaz even was. He's taken this program to another level. Who thought that I think the best you could hope for when he took over, if you're a Pioneers fan, was just that he'd maintain. He's taken it to another level up there. And they're back in the Frozen Four again. Third in 4 years, going for back-to-back titles, looking for their 11th all-time title. I mean, I get it. If you're a Tiger fan, if you're a Falcon fan, I think at best you're Wes Mantooth at the end of Anchorman. With every fiber of my being, I pure, straight hate you. But GD, do I respect you? That's how you have to look at what DU is doing. And it's not a bad thing for the state of Colorado to have that representation. For people to understand how important that sport is in this state. And hopefully they dig a little bit deeper and see the strides that Colorado College is taking, and in a different conference, what Air Force has been able to do. You know, the rising tide lifts all boats, right? So if they're talking about DU, if they're watching DU in the Frozen Four, they're talking about college hockey in this state. Trust me, I would much rather either of the two schools that are in this city be on that stage instead of DU. And that is the goal. That is what we're all striving for. So either the Tigers or the Falcons, knock them off their pedestal. We hope. But for now, they can't. And very few teams actually can across the country knock Denver off of their pedestal. And it is at least deserving of respect. You don't have to admire them, but you got to respect them. But it's not revelatory for you to know that Colorado loves its hockey and invests in its hockey and takes its hockey very seriously. Something else happened this weekend that I think may even catch people who live in this state by surprise. Denver Summit, the expansion NWSL club, put 63,000 plus in Mile High Stadium this weekend for their first home match ever. 63,000 people came out to watch women's soccer, which is absolutely incredible and amazing. But it is also not as surprising if you understand what's going on. You think it's by pure happenstance that three of the most impactful women's soccer players for the U.S. women's national team are from Colorado? You think that's just dumb luck? The fact that that team is able to field multiple Colorado natives, you think that's just because they wanted to get Colorado players on the team? No. We take soccer, especially women's soccer, very seriously in this state. We invest in it. And Saturday was, in many ways, the culmination. I mean, that's a franchise that's going to try and win a title, and maybe that ultimately is the culmination. But to put 63,000 plus in Mile High Stadium, in the Broncos Stadium, that is unbelievable. And one of the Colorado natives on this summit team, Janine Sonis, talked about how amazing it was to play for her hometown team. She's from Highlands Ranch.
Represent this community and give back to a community that gave me everything that I have really does mean the world to me. And to do it in front of 63,000 people is incredible. So it was a tough balance to manage the emotions and putting in a performance. I will never forget walking out of that tunnel today and hearing the crowd screaming for us. So I look forward to our wonderful fans supporting us for the rest of the season. And like I said, hopefully bringing the first championship to Denver.
And to that end, and it's a natural question to ask, how sustainable is this? I don't expect the next game and the next game and the next game to get 63,000 fans. Maybe they come close because it's year one. This is not going to be what it's going to be all the time. Right? It's just not. And that's just a reality. Right? It's new. But let's figure out how far they can fall here. They start at 63,004 fans. If they get down to 20,000 a game, they are obliterating every other NWSL team in attendance. Think how far they would have to drop and still be number one with a bullet in the league in terms of attendance. This is a state, and I'll extend it. I'd be curious if you went to the game or are going to go to any of the matches up there in Denver. 719-247-1313. But clearly we want to be outside. We love sports in this state, and we want to be outside. We go to Coors Field regularly to take in that pathetic product. This is new. This is different. This is exciting. And this is something that you feel like they can have sustained success. And the fact that they're going to be downtown, that's going to help because they can't be out where the Rapids are. That would hurt their chances here. But if you had any doubt about the viability of women's soccer, of women's sports in general, 63,004 people spoke pretty loudly. Awesome to see. More Drive Time Sports next. Welcome in. Thanks for tuning in, whether you're listening to the show or watching it, as you can do on a daily basis, anywhere you scroll at 740 KVOR and at Extra Sports 1300. While you're there, feel free, like, subscribe, and most importantly, comment, because this is an interactive experience. If you want to text or call in your thoughts, you're welcome to do so as well. 719-247-1313 is the number to do that. Broncos general manager George Paton spoke about his prized acquisition, that being Jalen Waddle. And George Paton does not think they paid too high of a price.
You look at the caliber of the draft class. Who can we get at 30 within the draft class? Then you factor in the cap and the finances, not just this year, but down the road. The fact that he's 27 years old, the fact that it was 30, it wasn't 16. We compared it to all the other trades the last 10 years with the first round pick, and the value we felt, was 26. That's what the value we gave him. And so you look into all that when you make a trade like this. No one loves picks more than me, so that's hard. And I've probably traded too many, God darn it. But I think it's worked out.
It's just remarkable to think, now that you've gotten to know George Paton, that, and what he says is true. He loves his picks. He is anti-Les Snead. He doesn't, no F them picks. He loves his picks. His first order of business as the Broncos general manager was to trade a ton of picks for Russell Wilson, and then trade more picks to get Sean Payton. But he does love his picks, and he does love the draft. Whatever metric he's using, okay, fine. It got them to the right answer. I think Jalen Waddle is probably a little bit better than the 26th pick in this draft, don't you think? But if you're a Broncos fan, you're just happy that he pulled the trigger and got the deal done. And you know who's happier than even you are? The guy that's going to be throwing him the ball.
He was pretty excited when I walked down to the training room. He was excited. Obviously, went to dinner with all of us. Both, I think, thinks he's kind of a quasi GM sometimes. And sometimes he's right, sometimes he's wrong. I think he's right on this guy. This guy's pretty special.
I teach my kids to self-advocate. Don't be afraid to ask your teachers for what you need, right? Their job is to make you successful. And your entire life rides on what you do in school. So don't be afraid to say, hey, I need this. I need that. This doesn't make sense to me. I need more help here or there. That's what teachers are there for. Comparing that to Bo Nix, George Paton's job right now, Sean Payton's job right now, is to make Bo Nix into the best quarterback he could possibly be, which by extension will make the Broncos the best team they will be, which, if you're a Broncos fan, you're hoping means a Super Bowl championship. So, yeah, you could get a little needy. There's a tack that you have to take. But I think it's a great thing if Bo Nix is sitting there saying, we need to get this guy. And it's so... Here's the thing. I forget the roller coaster ride of the way free agency started and then all that kind of stuff. This was such an obvious move that the Broncos needed to make. Like, it's so, whether it's Bo Nix saying it or Sean Payton or you or me, it's so obvious that the Broncos had to make a move like this. It was right there. It was just a matter of whether they were willing to do it. And George Paton ran things through his abacus and figured out that what they gave up was worth it. Thank goodness for that. Now, if you think that the receiver room is a little bit too crowded in Denver, you're not going to find an ally in George Payton.
No, we really like those pieces, and they're all going to help us. They've all helped us up to now. I'm going to Little Jordan and Bandy. I mean, we really like. We're 7-8 deep. We really like it, and so why would we, build up this room than trade someone right now?
Okay, I'll put it a different way. They're not 7 or 8 deep. I will say this: they don't, I think, have players. It wouldn't make any sense. What are you going to get back for some of these guys? I mean, let's say beyond. So Waddle, Sutton, Mims are non-starters, right? Obviously, you're not going to trade those guys. That's silly. You just added Waddle to make everybody else in that room better, and then you're going to trade Marvin Mims or Cortland Sutton, and it doesn't make a ton of sense. Even you go with Troy Franklin, you're like, kind of want to see a little bit more, not in terms of him getting more touches, but just more of him. Another year of him with the Denver Broncos, especially in this role, and see what he can do. The Broncos are not 7 or 8 deep in the wide receiver room. That's a silly thing that George Payton said, and absolutely a general manager thing to say. You got Jalen Waddle because you're not 7 or 8 deep. You got Jalen Waddle because you don't have enough receiving talent in that room. So let's just be honest with what the situation is. But I said this when the trade went down. Now all of a sudden, Cortland Sutton, you love Cortland Sutton as a number 2 receiver. You love Marvin Mims with Sutton and Waddle getting most of the attention. You're more intrigued with the upside of a Troy Franklin now that you're not relying on him to win you football games. So it does, where I will agree with George Payton, is it does make the receiver room look a lot better with Jalen Waddle. But let's chill a little bit on the hyperbole here. It's a great move, and you very much like the receiver room that the Denver Broncos have now. But it's because you got Jalen Waddle, not because of the guys in the roles you had last year. That was actually one of the big disappointments of the Broncos season, is that Bo Nix, as much as, we criticized and we analyzed every throw that he made, man, did he get let down a lot by the guys catching the football. Doesn't feel like he's going to be let down nearly as much with Jalen Waddle. And with everybody getting a little bit less, might be the best for everyone there. Now, maybe there's something else that's coming down the pike. J.K. Dobbins didn't want to spill any beans the other day on NFL Network. Maybe there is something else to be made, but the idea that the Broncos are going to do anything else significant is quite far-fetched. This pretty much does it for Broncos free agency. Here's how George Payton feels like the Broncos made out.
We feel really good with what we accomplished in free agency. We filled a lot of needs with good players that we know, and yet we had flexibility to go make a trade. And so if we just jumped out and made a big splash to trade, we wouldn't have been able to make the trade.
And that's fair, right? And we're not privy to what was going on behind the scenes during the start of free agency. Now that we're all on the same page now that Jalen Waddle is a Denver Bronco, now it all makes more sense. The relative inactivity, the inactivity at the beginning of free agency. The Broncos, not despite being promised that they were going to make a big splash by NFL insiders, they weren't doing it, and it didn't make a lot of sense. Now it makes sense. And yes, George Payton, you can say now that you landed Jalen Waddle, that if you would have went out and tried to bid on the services of some of these other free agents that you wouldn't have been able to acquire Jalen Waddle. And that's fair. But it's also fair, given the information we were presented with at the start of free agency, to say, Broncos, what are you doing? So getting Jalen Waddle, I think, makes this free agency period for the Denver Broncos a success. Is it the absolute best that they could have done? I don't think so, but their concerns over the health of J.K. Dobbins do not mirror my own. Here's George Payton on his running back.
He's completely healthy now. That injury was it was a hip drop. It was a freak. His body didn't break down. This guy, from the minute he walked in our building, changed it. And so it's like, we just didn't want to let him leave. He meant too much to the building. He was a top 4 rusher in the league when he got hurt. Let's sign him back. He meant too much to this team.
Okay. The nature of this particular injury was not because his body broke down. But the concerns I had over the Broncos bringing in J.K. Dobbins last year were based on not freak injuries in the past. So, all right, maybe this one is a little bit different, but J.K. Dobbins still has the injury history he has. So I thought there was a potential upgrade out there for the Denver Broncos. And one of them is in their division with Kansas City. The other one is in New Orleans. But you feel much better about the Broncos missing out on those guys. Waddle with Dobbins, I think, is better than Achane or Walker without Jalen Waddle, if that makes sense, right? Now that Jalen Waddle is in the building, then you're like, okay, J.K. Dobbins, still worry a little bit about his health, but you got Dobbins and you got Waddle, which would be better than just Kenneth Walker or just Travis Achane. Hindsight, as they say, is 2020. So up next for the Denver Broncos is the NFL draft, where they do not pick until very late in the second round. But George Payton, quick to remind you that he's done a pretty good job with picks in that range over his tenure.
Well, obviously, we're focused on 30 in the second. We've fortunately been there before, I think, on 2 different times. And so we have a good feel for that, and we can hone in. Doesn't mean we won't trade up at some point, but we'll have a really good feel for, the 62nd pick or whatever we're picking. We took a Mims at 64, Benito 64. We have a pretty Harvey, maybe 60, I think. So we have a pretty good feel, of that realm.
And it's hard to argue against that. Now, and I like 2 of those 3 picks when the Broncos made them. I really like the Nick Benito pick, and I really like the Marvin Mims pick. RJ Harvey, I was a little lukewarm on. Don't be shocked if they don't go running back. As an insurance, perhaps, for J.K. Dobbins, but you like Harvey, do you love him? That would be my question to the Denver Broncos. I mean, each draft is different, right? You make the best decision for the draft that you're in, and you move on to the next year and you reevaluate. Do the Broncos love RJ Harvey? Or if there is a running back in that general vicinity, do the Broncos look at their running back room and say, maybe we should bring in another guy? My feeling about this is going to be very meat and potatoes draft for the Denver Broncos. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. If they come out fortifying the depth on, George Payne was asked about John Franklin Myers, replacing him, building up the depth on the offensive and defensive lines. I think that would be a smart strategy for the draft. And given everything else that they have, I think that's smart. That's kind of how I feel like they're going. In terms of the picks that you care about, late, who knows? It might pick up another right receiver, might go one of these project tight ends. I saw a tweet from Mike Kliss that they're working out or looking at Svoboda from Wyoming. One guy I'll throw out that I wouldn't be shocked if he ended up a Denver Bronco, and I think you'd be like not thinking that he would be a game changer, but like a fun thing. Eli Heidenreich. You should know the name if you're an Air Force fan, because he's been kind of a thorn in their side over the last few years. Eli Heidenreich as kind of this utility player. I think he most profiles to like a slot receiver, but you can use him out of the backfield. Like, I think that the Broncos are going to maybe take some swings later in the draft, but what they do with the remaining decent draft capital that they have, I kind of feel like it's offensive or defensive line. And we'll try over the coming days and weeks to figure out. Just the hardest thing is to figure out who's even going to be available by the time the Broncos draft at the end of the second round. But we'll get into it over the coming weeks. 719-247-1313. Your thoughts on George Paton's comments. Coming up next, one of the wildest teams in professional sports in terms of some of their decisions made another one that might take the cake. That's next here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Remember when the Denver Nuggets last year fired their coach and general manager like very late in the season? Remember how wild that was? May I present to you the Vegas Golden Knights, who over the weekend decided that a guy who also helped bring them a championship, much like Michael Malone did for the Denver Nuggets, was not the right fit anymore. And with only 10 to 12 games left, I think Vegas is down to like 8. They fired Bruce Cassidy to bring in John Tortorella. And the kicker, they have not committed to John Tortorella beyond these last few regular season games in the playoffs. He is on a tryout contract with the Vegas Golden Knights. So, for those who know hockey, you may, or people who don't know hockey and don't understand the way the Vegas Golden Knights do business, you may look at it and say, wow, that's extreme. For them, this is normal to a large extent. Since Vegas came in the league, they have won the 4th most games of any franchise. Avs have won more. I think the Bruins have won more, and there's one other team. But Vegas is 4th. Okay? They've had the 4th most wins since they entered the NHL. They have had the most head coaches, tied with Buffalo, who until this year has been an absolute train wreck of a franchise. That doesn't compute in our sports brains. That a team that has had the success of the Vegas Golden Knights would change so frequently one of what we think are the most important positions in an organization. Except here's the thing. Vegas doesn't view head coach the way that many franchises do. There's actually 2 positions that Vegas, in some people's minds, would say devalues that in our sporting culture and in hockey culture we hold in high regard: coach and goalie. Remember what one of the first acts of, wow, this Vegas team is a little bit different, is the way they treated Marc-Andre Fleury. Right? The only starting goalie they've ever known. And they went to a Stanley Cup final with him. And then they stabbed him through the heart, as his agent so eloquently put out in picture form on social media. They look at those 2 spots as being less important than you think they are. And what they do, we actually see this in a number of different areas of our lives. Basically, it's the idea of a couple things. One is anti-fragility. Okay, without boring you with the details, basically they are of the mind that introducing the kind of stress that switching out a head coach midstream, and this is way down from midstream, but replacing goalies and coaches the way they do introduces actually a positive stressor that will get, you've heard of the new coach bump. You've seen how teams deploy goalies in a game. They pull a goalie even if it's not their fault that they're losing, to energize the group. Vegas does this in terms of replacing them on the actual team because they feel like that kind of a shakeup can bring out the best in their team. But you see this you see this in tech, the idea, stable architecture, but modular leadership, meaning we're going to make the nuts and bolts of what we do as strong as we can. And look at it from Vegas's perspective. That's the team, right? This is a team that has always added more, has improved. You know, they get Jack Eichel. They brought in guys on the blue line. They have, and it's part of the reason why they've underachieved in people's minds is because they are so talented. This is a talented team, a Stanley Cup champion level talented team. But they feel like that's where the stability should lie. But in terms of who leads the group, not as important. You see this in medicine, trauma medicine. Fix what you can fix right now to get the patient stable. And then you can worry down the line about cleaning up some other things. This is how trauma surgery works. So this is what these are some of the principles that Vegas has taken into their organization since they came into the league in 2017, 2018 year. And it is so counter to our sports culture. I would say the way they treat coaches, if you're a European soccer fan, you'll be like, I get this. But for our culture in North America, this seems so counter. But what they bank on is that they are getting rid of people at those two positions, coach and goalie, before the decline. They don't want to ride it out with Bruce Cassidy, get bounced in the first round, and then go in to the offseason thinking, should we keep him or not? And they don't get hung up on, hey, Bruce Cassidy a couple years ago brought us the Stanley Cup. They're not loyal in that way. So there's so many teams that, and I'm not saying there's any right way, because some teams, Vegas has been successful doing it this way. Colorado, when it comes to coach, they have been as stable as anybody outside of Tampa, and they've been successful. There's more than one way to do it here. But Vegas seems so often on their own island. But what they're trying to do is trying to get out before the arc starts to go down. Right? They want to hang on. They want to get rid of somebody too early than too late. And they're committed to the bit. So I think it's absolutely fascinating the way they do it. I can't say that it's the way I would do it if I were running an NHL franchise, but credit to them. This has been them the entire time. They have not deviated from this. Now, I think, is the most extreme case, though. Right? This is right at the end of the season. You're making this change. And making this change from a guy that you won a Stanley Cup with. This will be, I think, the ultimate test of the Vegas way of doing things. I don't think, because they haven't been able to figure out goalie, I don't think that this is going to lead Vegas deeper into the playoffs than you think they will go. But if it works, then, man, somebody's going to start copying what Vegas is doing. It doesn't seem like anybody has yet. But if Torts weaves this thing into a Stanley Cup final appearance, One of these teams in the doldrums is going to be like, what do we got to lose? Let's do it the Vegas way. There's really nothing like it in North American sports, the way that Vegas goes about their business. And it does lead. There are some other things like LTIR. It doesn't make them well liked among fans, players, owners, coaches. But you can hasn't been an expansion franchise, I think, in any sport that has had the success that Vegas has had. And we're long gone from, Gary Bettman starting them on second base with the expansion rules. Like except for Shea Theodore, they've changed over that entire roster. John Tortorella in Vegas. Can you get two entities that are perceived to be as what's the word that will flip on a whim than those two? Tortorella can just lose it. And Vegas, as an organization, for many people from the outside, feel like they make these rash decisions in a panic. I assure you it's not. I assure you they're not panicked in the way they do things. But from the outside, it seems like volatile. That's the word I'm looking for. Are there two more volatile entities, forget hockey, in all of sport than the Vegas Golden Knights and John Tortorella? I can't wait to see how this all comes together out in Sin City. Take your thoughts, 719-247-1313. Coming up next, this first weekend of the Major League Baseball season, it was fun. Just too bad that the Rockies can't participate. You may not have noticed over the last couple of years, but baseball has gotten fun. Used to be not a lot of fun, boring. Games were long. At bats would only end in 3 potential ways: home run, strikeout, or walk. The nerds were taking over with analytics. I would just encourage you, when you have some free time, Avs play tonight, so it may not be tonight. Tomorrow, neither the Avs nor the Nuggets play. Maybe check out a baseball game, because baseball is getting really fun again. And one of the reasons is the one piece of sports technology that I absolutely like, because the rest of them I absolutely hate. ABS, the automatic balls and strikes system. It's not the way of the world, because you still have home plate umpires calling all the balls and strikes, but you can challenge said calls immediately, whether you're a pitcher, a hitter, or a catcher. Allow me to show your ears a glimpse of what ABS has brought to Major League Baseball. This is in Cincinnati this weekend.
Got him looking, challenge, immediate tap of the helmet. The Reds runners all hold.
Batter's challenging the pitch.
ABS powered by T-Mobile. That's out of the zone. The AB continues. ABS can be a lot of fun, Lark.
That's Reds television. And then later in the same at-bat from Eugenio Suarez, it happened again.
Now the 2-2. Called strike 3, tap the helmet again. He says it's off the plate away.
Batter's challenging the pitch.
Here we go. Outside. The loudest cheers of the game. The Reds have hit 2 homers, come on back-to-back challenges.
And it happened everywhere. The ABS, like Rob Manfred has fallen hindquarters backwards into absolute gold. And I've been a proponent of ABS just being the way it is. I have to walk back a little bit, because I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose what you just heard. If the robots are calling everything, you don't have moments like that. I feel for the umpires, but this is the best way to do it. Is this the way that people feel in tennis matches? When they do the graphic with the mark of the ball, do they go nuts when that happens? Because that's the only other sport. Soccer with VAR. But with VAR, that's like, the goals are obviously hugely important. We're talking about a ball or a strike in the midst of an at-bat that can last 10 pitches, in an inning that lasts 3 hitters, in a game that lasts 9 innings. To get that kind of a reaction from a very small piece of the game, how is Rob Manfred not like loving what is going on in his sport over this weekend? I can't take that away. I can't just make the robots call everything, because then where's the fun in that? They would get everything right all the time. See, it all comes back around. Even ironically, when I am pushing to eliminate human error, which I don't normally do, I am a big advocate of human error. As a human who errs repeatedly on a daily basis, I am a fan of human error. My one time I say, let's get rid of human error, Now it's like, no, we need human error. We need the umpires to get it wrong because we need ABS challenges. Here are the numbers. And this number blew me away when I heard it. There were, and I know it's over, this was just through Saturday. There were 124 challenges of a ball or strike call. 124. Through Saturday, we had a whole nother day of games yesterday. The challengers, whether it be pitcher, hitter, or catcher, are batting .540. The challenges have been more right than they've been wrong. And catchers, and this might be quite the indictment on the umpires, the only person that has as good of a look at it as the umpire, the catcher, they're successfully challenging 63% of the time. This is phenomenal. This is amazing. And it's another thing in what baseball has done with the pitch clock, with the making the bases bigger to encourage more running. Obviously, we just had the World Baseball Classic, which gets everybody in a tizzy as well because it's, USA versus the world. Baseball, a sport that I grew up loving and had the most fun, whether watching it or playing it, is now fun again. It sucked for a while. It's now fun. And I think there is a legitimate conversation going on right now. NBA or MLB? Because right now, all the news cycle for MLB is great. This weekend was fantastic. People are loving the ABS. They're loving the games. And all anybody's doing with the NBA is trashing it constantly. Even when we get into the MVP debate, it's negative because it's Cade Cunningham. Well, the 65-game rule. Or, Luka doesn't play any defense. Like, try to talk about the NBA, or better yet, not you. National talking heads who set the tone for the conversation. I mean, I can at least be fair to them with that. They set the tone nationally for the conversation, and it's all negative all the time with the NBA. Tanking, 65-game rule, Luka doesn't play defense. Jokic now, there's a whole wormhole that if you want to go down on Twitter, you can do it. How the scorekeepers in Denver are padding Jokic's stats and counting handoffs as assists, and people are uproar. Like, try to speak about the NBA in a positive way. Like, try it. You can't. That's how negative everything is around the NBA. With Major League Baseball, it's all fun. There are no steroids that we know of. People are running the bases, the ABS. It's fun, and nobody's paying attention to the fact that the Dodgers are outspending every other team in Major League Baseball combined and deferring the contracts to 30 years from now. So Shohei Ohtani's children can become billionaires. Trust me, the owners are paying attention to that. Baseball's fun. Basketball sucks right now. It's just the shame that it doesn't coincide. And I know why you may not be up on this conversation. Because baseball is still at its core very regional sport. The interest level is largely determined by the success of the team in that given market. And you can't get lower than Colorado right now in terms of baseball markets. And while everyone else was having their fun with the ABS and stealing bases, the Colorado Rockies were doing something even they have not done in their history. They lost the first 3 games of a season for the first time ever. And the way Sunday ended was the most brutal way you could imagine. I present to you Marlins television. Rockies lead. They jump on the Marlins immediately. They're up 2-0 before the literally hundreds of people that go to Marlins games settled into their seats. They led the entire game until the 9th.
Rockies trying to salvage the series. Casey swings. Casey hits it in the air. Casey to deep right. We're going home.
A walk-off home run, the second blown lead of the weekend for the Rockies after being completely powerless against Sandy Alcantara on opening day. The Rockies, and I thought the bullpen was like, and it's all relative, the best part of their team, and they blew 2 leads. And they lost on a walk-off yesterday. And they're not challenging. There was a whole conversation that they had on the broadcast yesterday. Ryan Spilborghs was talking about a conversation he had with Warren Schaefer about the lack of pitches worth challenging. Everyone else, through Saturday, 124 challenges across Major League Baseball. The Rockies didn't count for any of them. Like, the Rockies did not join in the fun that anybody had this weekend in Major League Baseball. No wins and no ABS challenges. I expect tonight, as they play the Toronto Blue Jays, I think it's tonight. Double check that for me, Ray. I think they played tonight. They landed at 2:30 in the morning, by the way. Thank goodness the Rockies are not carried on altitude or we never hear the end of it. But tonight, all I want Warren Schaefer to do, just challenge a pitch. Doesn't even have to be a good one. Just give us the suspense of waiting for the animation to hit our screen. That's all I ask. If you're going to lose, which you probably will because it's the Toronto Blue Jays, they're the reigning AL champions, at least just give us that. 719-24-7, 1313. Also, our question of the day on Bookface is, do you like ABS? I love it. I was already a proponent of it. The only change I have to make is that I don't want this to now take over and be the way balls and strikes are called. I need that feeling. I at least want to. Can I watch one Rockies game where they have a challenge before we really discuss making this the way all balls and strikes are called? Like, just let's do that once, and then we can reconvene on this. But it's amazing. You got guys that are Randy Arozarena thought he walked. It was a called strike 3, and he continues to go down the first baseline, patting his helmet for the ABS. Like, he knew it. And he was right. And then we had and one of the better, we should have gotten this piece of audio. The Twins manager, Derek Shelton, got thrown out for arguing ABS. And they said, you can't argue the robots. Man, baseball has had a fun opening weekend, save for one particular team that is in Toronto tonight to take on the Blue Jays. The 3 stories that are driving the show coming up next. Hello there. Welcome in. Glad to have you on this fine Monday. Appreciate you listening to the show, whether it's on 740 KVOR or Extra Sports 1300. Of course, there's another way that you can listen, and that's by downloading the streaming apps of those two fine radio stations where you can hear not just this show, but any of your favorite shows on either radio station. And it's free. Free to download, free to use, and sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for all. Shouts to those of you watching this show as well. Anywhere you scroll at 740 KVOR and at Extra Sports 1300. If you want to connect with the program, would love for you to do it. 719-247-1313. Perhaps you have a thought or two on these, the three stories that are driving the shoe. All right, let's start with the newly minted Western Conference Player of the Week. Are we sure we're done with the MVP conversation?
Jokic has it inside the arc. Hands off behind him over to Jamal Murray. Goes to the left hand. Back behind him, Jokic and a three. Yeah!
Nuggets back in the lead by one, 67-66.
Altitude Sports Radio on the call, as heard on Extra Sports 1300. Nikola Jokic last night helped lead the Denver Nuggets to their sixth straight win. Ironically, by not getting a triple-double. He was a couple of assists shy, but the Denver Nuggets won again. And today, Nikola Jokic was recognized by the league as the Western Conference Player of the Week. How about these numbers? For a week, Nikola Jokic averaged. No, let's see. Where's averages? There we go. 26 points, 17 rebounds, and 14 assists. The press release from the Nuggets had like 8 different sets of stats. 26, 17, and 14 he averaged this week. Arguably during one of the most important weeks of the season, because the season is dwindling down. What a player Nikola Jokic is. What a valuable player Nikola Jokic is. You know what? He may be the most valuable player in the NBA right now with the way he's playing. But a unbelievable week, even by Nikola Jokic standards. We cannot grow tired of this. But the bigger picture is the winning streak of the Denver Nuggets. And one thing that has happened, not just in the last week, but really in the last month, this team's playing better defense. They held the Warriors to under 100 points. No Steph Curry, but come on. Given the way this team defended for much of this season, holding any team, the Wizards under 100, would be a struggle. The 6th time this year the Nuggets have held an opponent under 100 points. That's one more than they did last year. And most of those have come in just the last 18 games. 4 times in the last 18 games. This team, as the season reaches its end, are playing their best defense, which is something that has long been one of the things you detract from this team and wonder if they can really win a title with their defense. They still don't rank highly. There's still work to do. I think you're right to still question it, but at least it's trending towards the Denver Nuggets playing their best basketball going into the playoffs, which, again, is the very least you can ask. And see where that gets you. on a winning streak, holding teams under 100. Jamal Murray going to be on an all-NBA team. Nikola Jokic making a late push for the MVP. It's coming together. Just will it come together enough? And will the entire team be available? Because that was the one negative about last night, is that Aaron Gordon called off work for hamstring tightness. I tried to do the same thing this morning, and I am here. So that tells you the power that Aaron Gordon has as opposed to myself. And then during the game, the Nuggets lost Spencer Jones, Cam Johnson, and, if you care, Zeke Naji. Precautionary with Cam. We'll see with Spencer Jones. So along with the defense, it was probably the injuries. That was the other thing. We were going, I don't know if this is the Nuggets' year. Well, that's still continuing. But whatever form the Nuggets are in, they are playing maybe their best basketball towards the end of the season. It would be nice for them to continue it Saturday against San Antonio. And if OKC and San Antonio play their guys the last couple of games of the season, that would be also a couple of nice showcase games for the Nuggets before the playoffs begin. But onward and upward, another matchup with Utah coming up on Wednesday. Here is the other important basketball happening of the weekend.
From Sarr gets it into Cam Boozer. Boozer back to Sarr. Now ahead to Boozer, and UConn got a steal. Caravan for Mullins. Long three. He got it. Oh, he got it. He hit it. He hit the long three-pointer from the logo with 0.3 of a second left to go. I don't believe it. UConn has taken the lead with 0.3 of a second left to go.
Scott Graham on the call for Westwood One, as heard on Extra Sports 1300. I know we tend to be prisoners of the moment, but I'm having a really hard time thinking of a better end to an NCAA tournament game than the one we were treated to yesterday with UConn and Duke. The only thing that I can recall, like I can go into the history books and pull out, alley-oops for North Carolina State and Christian Laettner. I didn't watch those games. I didn't live those games. I lived yesterday. The only other game that I would say had me, on the edge of my seat like that was the finish in 2016 between Villanova and North Carolina. But the sequence of events to lead to a shot that if UConn ends up, and it might stand on its own as an indelible memory of the NCAA tournament for a lot of people, but can you imagine if UConn goes on to win the next two games? What that shot will mean in the history of not just UConn basketball, but college basketball? But the sequence of events with UConn coming all the way back from 19 points down, they have two free throws to make it a one-score game or a one-point game, and you're thinking, UConn's got a shot here. Brick the first free throw. And now you're thinking, well, Duke, they'll make the second one. Duke gets it. They get fouled. They go to the line, make it a four-point game, and then that's it. And then that play happens. Just an unbelievable finish to what is already an unbelievable comeback. UConn falls just short yesterday. It's still remarkable that they were able to make that a game against almighty Duke, down 19. But the fact that they were able to finish it off, thanks to some choking by Duke, it has to be said, led to one of the great finishes in college basketball history. And now UConn has title number 7 squarely within reach. 2 more wins in Indianapolis. And oh, by the way, Braylon Mullins from Indianapolis. Here's story number 3.
You look at the caliber of the draft class. Who can we get at 30 within the draft class? Then you factor in the cap and the finances, not just this year, but down the road. The fact that he's 27 years old, the fact that it was 30, it wasn't 16. We compared it to all the other trades the last 10 years with the first round pick, and the value we felt, was 26. That's the value. And so you look into all that when you make a trade like this. I mean, no one loves picks more than me, so that's hard. And I've probably traded too many, God darn it. But I think it's worked out.
That is Broncos general manager. Maybe in what the land of enchantment is George Payton speaking from? The bird? I mean, it sounds like Augusta National. They're in Arizona is where they are for the GM meetings, but that's him basically explaining what you and I know is a no-brainer. Trading for Jalen Waddle is a no-brainer for George Payton. I don't care what draft pick value you affix to Jalen Waddle. It is a no-brainer. I know you love your picks and all that kind of stuff. Come on now. Was there a more obvious need on the Denver Broncos? Can that need be addressed in a more perfect way? And can the asking price be any easier to pay than what the Broncos did? It's a no-brainer. So good. Sometimes not everybody has to make, these galaxy brain decisions in their line of work. Sometimes the best decisions are the most obvious ones. And George Payton trading for Jalen Waddle was obvious. And it might win him GM of the year after an offseason where for most of it, the Broncos did nothing. Just getting Jalen Waddle might give George Payton general manager of the year. I'm glad that he did it. You would be glad if you're a Broncos fan that he did his due diligence, that, that's important. But come on, dude. How do you not make that trade? And now it's on to the draft for the Denver Broncos. 719-247-1313. Want to bring you this, fellas. Ask you a question. Are you tired of being tired? Do you hit the gym and your body immediately requests a 2-week vacation? Do you try to focus and your brain just spins like a loading screen? Yeah, that might be low testosterone. And at Low T Center, they know exactly how to fix it. They've treated over 500,000 men. That's 500,000 since 2009. They are the original TRT clinic, the real deal. They don't use bargain bin mystery testosterone. It's pharmaceutical grade stuff customized to your actual numbers. Plus, they work with most insurance, so you're not going to go broke getting back to your best self. And right now, you can get a free men's T-test, discounted peptides and GLP-1s, and the most trusted team in TRT. So stop letting I'm exhausted be your entire brand. Go to lowtcenter.com. That's lowtcenter.com. I think this is the best time of the year on the sports calendar. Honestly, I know I love watching football as much as the next guy, but NCAA tournaments and multiple sports, obviously college hockey, popular around here. I enjoy it. Culmination of the NBA and NHL seasons, Major League Baseball starting up. Lot going on this weekend, and we've talked about a lot, and I welcome your thoughts at 719-247-1313. You could call or text into the show. Raider Dave has decided to call, and I love him for it. Love when we get the calls. Dave, first of all, how you doing? And second, what's on your mind today?
I am doing well. You sound good. You know, you bring up an interesting point. A lot of people think the fall area is the best time of the year, but the NFL is just going to commit $32 million to back up your argument. I would think that this would be the time of flag football, wouldn't it? So in years coming forward, I think you're right. This may be with the added portion of football. If they do have it this time of year, which I would think that they would, you might be onto something. That's a really good take. I like that. Hey, I don't know much about UConn basketball, and I only watched that game just for the fact that, you know, one team was behind, and I thought that it was a close enough matchup of a 1 and a 2 seed or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And I figured that, you know, the team that was behind, the UConn, was playing a little bit underneath themselves. And I just kept sitting there as a fan going, come on, let's get it. Come on, let's get it. Let's make this tight. And it came to be. And when you're somebody like the last guy to touch the ball for Duke, your life changes. And it's unfortunate because the coach, to me, is the one to blame here. He should have gone over with his team exactly what to do. And that would be throw that basketball up in the rafters. And they didn't do it, and they lost. I don't think it's on this young man, but he is going to live with that the rest of his life. On the other side of the coin, the gentleman's name is Evans, I think, and he shot that great 3 at the line, just drained it. And then in the closing moments, he drains one from 6 feet outside the arc? I mean, when he threw that up, I'm like, you got to be kidding. This is good. And it goes nothing but net. It was probably one of the greatest basketball shots I've ever seen. And you again bring up something that's fantastic, because if they go all the way for whatever reason, that is going to be the shot heard around the world for UConn. It's amazing. I'm originally from Tucson. I love my Wildcats, wearing my T-shirt and going crazy for them. And for them to come up at Boulder, where I watched them, not at the last game of the year, and just sort of flub through with backups and not look great. And I told my wife, we'll stay for 7 minutes of the second half. Once they got the lead, we left, and they never let it go. This is a second half team, and they are going to be matched against somebody who's got 1 day less rest, but didn't have quite the opponent that the U of A had. Mm-hmm. And so
you're talking about Michigan, who they play.
Yeah. Well, I think this is basically, for all intents and purposes, the NCAA championship coming up. And I just really think that this is going to be a whale of a game, and I can't wait. So bear down, go Cats.
Yeah, and I picked your boys to win at the start of this tournament. Thanks, Dave. Call more often. Love hearing from you guys at 719-247-1313. I do. I agree. I think the winner of Michigan, Arizona is winning, but it's hard. Like, here's the other part coming out of the UConn game. Team of Destiny, ? Like, is it just meant to be for UConn? But I'm with you. I picked Arizona at the beginning. I think Michigan is phenomenal. And that's going to be a terrific game. And I'm not like into the Illinois story at all. So I think I would kind of but if you're a Jokic fan, the Balkan 5 that they got, I guess there's some. I'd like to see UConn. I'm not one to shy away from dynasties. I'd like to see UConn play the winner of Arizona and Michigan. But yeah, and there's the other thing. I've heard a lot of people, and I think that's what Raider Dave was intimating. is that John Shire should have taken the timeout. I think that Boozer and Shire were actually on the same page. I don't think that the timeout was actually necessary because John Shire looked to me like he was motioning for Boozer to throw it into the front court, and I messed him up. I say Cameron. Caden and Cam are the Boozer boys. Caden, I think John Shire and Caden Boozer were in lockstep. I think that's what John Shire wanted him to do. I just think he poorly executed it. Like I said, you got to like step through on those two guys, or you got to pump fake, wait for them to come down, then throw it. I just think it was poor execution. I think Duke had the play they wanted. They had two guys wide open in the front court. I think they had the play that they wanted. And I thought, and so I don't know that they needed to take a timeout, but it was just poorly executed by Boozer on that. And to Dave's point, I mean, he's going to, and not for nothing, he is the, and I don't mean this to pile on him, he's the lesser, like his brother is the surefire NBA can't miss prospect. I think he's going to get a shot in the NBA. I don't know that he's going to have all the opportunities his brother has. And unless he has that, this will be the lasting memory. Whenever he's brought up, that will be the memory that people recall. If it was Cam Boozer who turned it over, he might have a 15-year NBA career where he could do a lot of stuff that's going to make him more synonymous with that. I hope it works out for Caden Boozer. I feel terrible for him. And also in today's day and age, let's not, minimize the fact that he sat there at his locker. I mean, Nathan McKinnon didn't want to talk to the media the other night. Caden Boozer sat there in front of his locker and answered every question like a pro's pro. And it just makes you feel even more gutted for him because he's that good of a young man to be able to sit there and face the music in what has to be the worst day of his life, or at least his basketball life. So good call, Dave. What do you got, Ray?
All right. On our question of the day, do you like ABS in Major League Baseball?
Oh, yes. ABS. A lot of fun. People living on and dying on every challenge.
Yeah. So we got one yes from Brian.
Okay.
We got another Brian saying it proves how bad CB Buckner is as an umpire.
And CB Buckner was, when I played he was umpiring the Reds game when Eugenio Suarez challenged twice and was successful. CB Buckner, long time known as one of the, in a world where Angel Hernandez is no longer in the picture, I think CB Buckner is looked at as the worst umpire.
And then from Rich, not the way it's being used so far.
Okay.
There needs to be limits on how many times you can challenge. Start with 2, you get 1 right, then you get 1 more. Miss on both of them, and then you're done.
Well, that's already the rule, I believe. If you challenge twice and are incorrect, you're done.
Okay.
I believe that is the rule. Again, I don't know because I've been watching the Rockies all weekend and there were no challenges. I believe it's, but I think what Rich is getting to is you might be able to challenge more every time you get it right. It may not cost you. I think it is 2 unsuccessful. You can double check me on that, but I think it's 2 unsuccessful challenges, and then you're done with those. So
yeah, you're allowed 2 challenges per game.
If you're right, do you get another one?
Let me see. Okay, each team gets 2 challenges per game. If a challenge is successful and the call is overturned, the team retains the challenge.
Okay.
If the call is upheld, the challenge is lost.
Why don't they just say, like, this is so non-important, but this is one of the things I'm fixated on. You get another challenge. You don't retain the challenge. You get the challenge.
Right.
You get another one. That's the correct way to say it. Don't say you retain your
Retain the
challenge.
because technically you just used
you
it.
use the challenge.
Right?
You challenged the
Yes.
call, and you got it right, so you get another one. So you get to challenge 3 now. No, hey, keep doing it until you get 2 wrong. I'm okay with. I'm okay with that. But yeah, 2 and you gotta be done. I mentioned the catchers at 63%. Batters, I think, had slightly worse than that, and I think the pitchers were the worst. They only challenged a few times, but I think they only got like 1 right. It really shouldn't be the pitchers.
No,
it really shouldn't be, because they're. And I even kind of doubt the hitters until this weekend, and then I'm like, I love that the hitters are challenging it. It should be the catcher. But again, you have to pick somebody on the other side to be able to challenge. So the batter makes a lot of sense. The pitchers, I'm glad that there wasn't a lot of pitcher challenges, because do just throw the pitches and don't worry. Let your catcher do that. So,
and then we got a couple texts from the 719. Snaps for the Rockies, Kaufman. At least their futility has the appearance of being authentic.
Their futility?
That's the
authentic
word.
Futility.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then we just got.
Yeah, it was, and I didn't expect, and I'm not expecting much. I'm really not. I did think that the start of the weekend. So I'm listening to the game, driving up to meet a friend in Denver, and in like the first or second inning, like Warren Schaefer's like crazy aggressive on the bases. Like he's trying to send a guy from for second to home on like a shallow base hit. The guy gets thrown out, but you go, you know what? Good on you for being aggressive. The guy had stolen the base earlier. That was one thing that Kevin Henry of the Gazette told us last week. Warren Schaefer is going to be very aggressive on the base paths. And I thought, and look, they only scored the 1 run against a Cy Young caliber pitcher. But I liked the first impression. If you just take game 1, even ending game 1, I liked the impression that Warren Schaefer made. But and I'm not saying Warren Schaefer did anything necessarily wrong this weekend, but as the weekend wore on, it's like, oh boy, I'm really going to have to, it's going to take a lot. I said that I was willing to see, because I wanted to see the ideas and what they were all about and whether there's a plan here. In order for me to keep watching the games to figure out what that is, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot from me.
So from Donnie, I like the ABS. I don't know why they use it so early in the game. Why not save them towards the end?
I mean, the counter, and that's like challenges in basketball. And I know this is near and dear to your heart, Ray, because I
hate the challenges in basketball.
You hate. But specifically, you hate that David Adelman does not challenge.
I hate 2 things. I hate that if you have a challenge in the first half and you use it and you lose, you do not have a challenge for the rest of the game. I feel that.
Okay, so that's a rule.
I hate that
you
rule.
Don't like. Okay.
And then the David Adelman thing, I don't like that. From what I've seen, he only challenges when you see Jokic adamant when it costs Jokic or Jamal. And then even if it's like a blatant foul that Jokic, I'm like, don't challenge it, even if it's in the first quarter, and he's not listening to me, which he should be, and then he loses his challenge. That's what I don't like.
Okay. Yeah. But so there's an argument. If the rules in baseball, it's a little bit different because, again, you get them for the entire game. I think the argument is like, look, you never know.
Right.
Yeah, you never know. In a world where UConn rallied from 19 points down, not that there was a moment in that game, but think of how many games in any given sport where something happens where you might be able to challenge it, and you say, well, let's hang on to it. Well, who knows? You may look back at the end of the game and say that, what if we would have, hit a home run on the next pitch? in a game decided by one run? What if, eventually we don't challenge a guy's foul, and then that guy ends up with 5 instead of 6, and the guy ends up beating us. So I get it, right? You would ideally use those in the most important times of the game.
Mm-hmm.
But two things. One, you're not guaranteed that the umpire is going to miss on one later in the game. And two, you just never know innings 1 through 6.
Right.
When an inning actually becomes the most important of the game and the opportunity that you squander because you didn't. I mean, ideally you hang on to them, but hey, if you think something's wrong, go for it. But there were some abuses of power, specifically from the batters this weekend.
And that's like in the NBA, right? Like ideally you want to hold on until the very end because, it might be a crucial call.
Or the NFL for that matter.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's also like, do you want to use it in the beginning so you can set the tone and say, hey, that's not a call. So from the rest of the game on, they take a closer look at it before calling it.
Right. And that's true too. And in the Nuggets world, that is even more pertinent because how many games, and I've talked about this, the familiar pattern, and it started last night too. Golden State comes out and they're scoring a bunch of points and they're not missing a lot of shots and the Nuggets are having to come from behind. Like this is just anecdotal. Like I don't have the hard numbers in front of me. I don't remember the last time that I remember watching a game where the Nuggets were the better team out of the gate. It always seems like their opponent is the better team out of the gate. And again, it's just anecdotal. Maybe there was a game 2 games ago that I'm just missing on, but it just seems like the Nuggets always start the game down.
So funny. Ever since you mentioned that, every time they play, I see it. And I get like,
it's the same
thing. I like text my mom and I'm like, don't worry.
Yeah. So for those unfamiliar, here's what it is. Almost every Nuggets game follows the same thing. Their opponent comes out, guns blazing. They're shooting hot, or the Nuggets are a little lackadaisical out of the gate, and they get jumped on early. Then the Nuggets key a rally, they take control of the game, and they get to a point where you're like, all right, now you're like the guy on Mortal Kombat. Finish him. You're up by 10. You're up by 12. Finish him. And then they don't because they don't get stops, and then it comes down to the end. The Utah game was this way. Came down to the end against a tanking Jazz team that they had, and then it's just a matter of can they have the ball last, or how much does that 2-man game between Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic best whatever the best thing on the other team is.
Right. All right, real quick, one more text from Scott Florissant. As half a Fire fan and half an Av fan, I love Torts behind the bench, except when they fell apart at the end of the season.
He did do that.
And from what I remember, a disagreement with York led him to being shown the door.
Yeah, I mean that's getting to my point about the volatility of these two parties. And that's why it's going to be so epic to watch what happens in Vegas. Not just but and an additional thing is that most everybody is rooting for Las Vegas to fail. But the volatility of an organization that has shown very little what people would categorize as loyalty towards their coaches, and a coach that tends to wear out his welcome very quickly. To Scott's point about what happened in Philadelphia, Torts burns hot and burns bright, and a lot has to go well. A lot has to be going well. I said that it's like Dan Hurley, right? So last year, Dan Hurley doesn't have a team that looks capable of winning another national championship. Doesn't mean they're not good.
Right.
Just means they're not good enough to win a national title. All of a sudden, Dan Hurley's a clown. Dan Hurley is, he's going too nuts. His team's out of control. He's out of control, blah, blah, blah. But the previous 2 years, he's conducting himself the same exact way. UConn's winning national titles, and he's this crazy genius. When guys coach as hard as Izzo, as Hurley, as Tortorella, who would be a good NBA example? The opposite of Doc Rivers. You better win. You better win if you coach that way, because if you don't, you're going to invite a lot of slings and arrows. And Vegas, I don't think is long for this postseason, and it could blow up a little bit in just the short amount of time that Torts and Vegas are together. In summation, I'm here for it. I can't wait to see it, but it's a very interesting pair, John Tortorella and the Vegas Golden Knights. 719-24-7, 1313, back after this. Tax day is coming up, but don't stress. Enter the Uncle Sam's giveaway for a chance to win $5,000. Just head to extrasports1300.com or kvor.com to enter this national contest, which is sponsored locally by Kruger Brothers Construction. Plan now and build stress-free. Back to the phones. Another Dave. It's the day of Daves. Love it. Dave is on the line, wants to talk some Nuggets. Dave, good to hear from you, buddy. What's on your mind?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to say a couple things real quick. Last time we spoke was right before the AFC Championship. I watched that game from the hospital and was back in again. So I've been listening. There's so much to talk about, but we'll talk about the Nuggets today. Ryan, I am really worried. As a season ticket holder, I see the same pattern you do. We start off slow, and I don't think that's going to work for us in the playoffs. And I was wanting your opinion on what you think. If Aaron Gordon is injured again, we know what Joker and Murray are going to do, but I think he's a key piece. And if he's missing, what are we going to do?
Yeah, well, I'll say no Aaron Gordon, it's game over. Like that's to me, that's a non, and I don't know what round that is, but we're talking about the Nuggets. This is a year where it's championship or bust. So they're busting if Aaron Gordon's not in. It's these other injuries like, when Peyton Watson was hurt, or if this Cam Johnson thing is a little bit more serious. That's where you have to look at it with a bit more nuance and be like, okay, can they get by Minnesota without this guy? Maybe, but not Oklahoma City. With Aaron Gordon, I think they're toast no matter what round they're in.
Yeah, I totally agree. And once we spoke, we both agreed that this is I'm a few years older than you, but this is the best Nuggets team on paper that we have ever seen, and it's maybe not going to work this time. So we'll be watching. Hey, real quick, I wanted to thank you for something else. I'm a CC grad, and I was in the hospital when you were over there interviewing the basketball.
The women's basketball team, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the co-captain of the 86 team, and I just am so happy that you're promoting that. I bleed black and yellow, all sports, and I really appreciate you going in there. Both coaches there have a great thing going. And I'm glad you brought that to light.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I say this to both Air Force and Colorado College. I know people look at me as an Air Force guy, but I'm a Colorado Springs guy. So if there's stories at CC that are worth telling, I'm always down to do it. But I appreciate the kind words. And are you doing well, Dave?
Yeah, I had a couple infections, so I spent 2 stints in the hospital for 5 days. Antibiotics worked great, so I feel wonderful. I've been listening, though, all the time.
Well,
so much to talk about. We'll catch up on all that.
Yeah, we'll catch up. You get healthy. I'm glad to hear that you're doing well, and I look forward to we get a chat again, Dave. Thanks. That's Dave calling in, talking some Nuggets here on Drive Time Sports. Yeah, I recognize the uptick defensively for this team. And right now, where my mindset is just be at your best. Be healthy, be playing defense, and have Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic playing at the highest level they played at in their career, which statistically they are. Just give me that, and let's see where it goes. We may look back at the end of the season and say 1 year was too quick to integrate all of these new pieces, or we may be saying that some of the pieces, Jonas Valanciunas, weren't the right fit. May say that David Adelman's not the right guy. There's any number of conclusions that we might end up drawing. But let's just go into this postseason feeling like this is as good as this Nuggets team is going to get. And I think that's what they're working towards with the improvement on the defensive side. The health thing is a little bit out of their control, but it seems like that's getting better. And so Let's see where it goes. On the topic of Jonas Valanciunas, by the way, and I made a joke at the beginning of the show that once he arrives on the court, you know that the Nuggets are finished. And the way he has been persona non grata in the Nuggets rotation as of late. I think we have gotten to the point here, and David Adelman has gotten to this point. You're just not going to be able to find a backup for Jokic. We're going to take that off the list. This is my pledge to you. Jonas Valanciunas is going to go play in Greece like he was going to do before this season and before the Nuggets said, you're under contract. Okay, he's going to go. Don't try to fill that role. Just be done. I thought maybe they had it with DeMarcus Cousins, but DeMarcus Cousins is a whole thing, and that didn't last for very long. I thought that they had it with Jonas Valanciunas. It looked to be the perfect. And since David Adelman has gone to this smaller lineup, it's worked. So I just think, in a way, you appreciate Jokic more because they try to put these bigger guys on the floor or a bigger guy in Jonas Valanciunas, and it just doesn't work. And you see so many teams around the league, and their big guys, even though we talk about how important size is, for so many teams, their biggest guy is their biggest liability. Right? Because he can't run the floor, or he's limited offensively, or he's limited defensively. Like, I think Jokic is so unique that you are never going to find, his clone, certainly, or even a mini version of him for the second unit. Closest thing was Jonas Valanciunas, and he just proven to be too much of a liability on the defensive end, and he gets kind of run out of the play. So just don't fill that role. Whatever the Nuggets are going to do this offseason, you don't need to do that. Take that off the list. If you want to get another guy like a Peyton Watson type, good defender, somewhere between small and big by NBA standards, get one of those guys. But I think this is the end of the trying to find a backup for Nikola Jokic. He's just too unique of a player, and the NBA still, these guys are so quick that some of these lumbering giants have a hard time hanging around. That's going to be it for the show today. Appreciate the interaction. Great text, great comments on Facebook. Thanks to the Daves for calling into the show. Coming up next, Avs. Looking for bounce back. Didn't play well the second time around against Winnipeg. Nazem Kadri revenge game against the Flames on Extra Sports 1300 on KVOR. It's Mark Levin. See you tomorrow.